How well can we really step into someone else's? I mean, even when we think we understand someone, there's often a gap, isn't there? What if we could get closer to grasping, human behavior, not just by watching people, but by simulating the thoughts and actions of thousands?
That's exactly the big question behind what we're looking at today.
Right.
It's quite something. Imagine building a digital world, right? Populated with over 1,000 individuals, each reflecting real attitudes, real behaviors.
Okay. Sounds like sci-fi almost.
It is a bit.
Okay.
But researchers from places like Stanford, Northwestern, University of Washington, and Google DeepMind, they've actually done it.
All right, so let's unpack this. There's a paper on arxiv.org, Generative Agent Simulations of 1,000. It outlines this, pretty ambitious project.
Extremely ambitious.
They've created these digital entities, generative agents. And what's really interesting you mentioned is the method. It's not just surveys, right? It's based on qualitative interviews.
Exactly. That's the key difference here. This wasn't about ticking boxes. The foundation was these really in-depth 2-hour audio interviews with over 1,000 participants.
2 hours each.
2 hours each. So they could capture, a real depth of personal stories, perspectives.
Yeah.
Stuff that standard quantitative methods just, they often miss it. The richness of that qualitative data is crucial.
So these aren't just generic programs guessing how people act. They're grounded in actual lived experiences and views. You can see the potential right away, can't you?
Oh, absolutely.
The researchers suggest maybe testing public health policies or reactions to new products or even how people might cope with big societal shifts.
For sure. The ability to simulate diverse human responses. It could be a revolutionary tool for social scientists, policymakers, businesses, really. It's like a virtual lab to explore these complex human interactions.
So our mission for this deep dive, then, is to really get into how they created these agents and, importantly, figure out how well they actually mirror real human behavior and attitude. Are they just like superficial echoes, or is there real in here?
That's the core question, yeah. We need to look at how they collected all this data, how the digital minds are built, the architecture, and critically, how they tested them. How do they validate the accuracy against real world?
Okay. Before we properly dive in, just a quick heads up for you listening. If this whole idea of AI modeling human behavior gets you thinking, you might want to check out the AI course over at rajamanikam.com. And we've got a discount for our listeners, too. Use the code QT.
All right, let's start at the beginning then. How did they even gather the information for these digital humans?
Right, so the data collection was, massive. They recruited over 1,000 participants, and they were really careful to make sure the group mirrored the U.S. population, across key things like age, gender, race, people lived, education, even political ideology.
That representativeness is key, I guess. Essential. Absolutely essential for a realistic simulation.
Getting that much detail from so many people, how did they manage that? 2-hour interviews.
Yeah, 2-hour audio interviews. And here's a twist. They used an AI interviewer.
An AI did the interview, not a person.
Correct. It followed a semi-structured protocol based on work for the American Voices Project. So it wasn't just reading a fixed list of questions.
Okay. So what kind of topics did it?
A really broad range, everything from, personal life stories, big life events, right through to current societal issues. Like they asked about views on the increased focus on race, racism, policing, things like that.
And semi-structured.
It means the AI could adapt. It could generate tailored follow-up questions based on what the participant was actually saying.
Wow.
So it allowed for a deeper dive into their specific experiences and viewpoints. Much more dynamic than just a standard script.
That AI adaptability sounds pretty sophisticated. Must have led to much richer conversations, I'd imagine.
Exactly. And the result was this incredibly rich data set. Each interview transcript averaged around 6,491 words.
That's a lot of text per person.
It is. And those transcripts essentially became the core memory for each agent. Think of it like their digital life story, shaping their simulated attitudes and behaviors. The depth is what really sets this apart.
Okay, so they've got these huge transcripts full of stories, opinions. How do you turn that into a digital agent that can actually, respond and react?
Yeah, that's the next step, the architecture. They built this novel agent setup that combines the interview transcripts with a large language model, an LLM.
Right.
So when an agent gets a query, like you ask it a question or give it a scenario, its entire interview transcript is fed in its context. It instructs the LLM to imitate that specific person.
So it's like giving the AI a crash course on one individual saying, based on all this, how would this person likely respond?
Precisely. And for more complex stuff like multi-step decisions, they also gave the agents short text descriptions, kind of like a short-term memory to track the conversation. But there's another layer they added, which is really clever. They called it expert reflection.
Expert reflection. What's that involve?
They prompted the LLM to act like different social scientists, a psychologist, a behavioral economist, a political scientist, a demographer.
Okay.
And each of these expert personas analyzed the interview transcripts to pull out key insights from their field's perspective.
So like a virtual panel dissecting each interview. What sort of insights are we talking about?
Well, for example, the virtual psychologist might notice recurring themes of independence in someone's story. The behavioral economist might flag key financial goals or decision patterns.
Yeah.
The political scientist looks at their stated beliefs. The demographer connects things to their background. You get the idea.
I see. And these expert takeaways were then stored with the agent's main memory.
Exactly. Stored right alongside the interview transcript.
And used to inform the prediction, make them more nuanced.
Precisely. It added this layer of analytical depth. The agent isn't just repeating interview lines, it's reasoning based on these distilled expert insights too. It makes the responses more sophisticated.
This sounds incredibly thorough, but okay, the big question, the proof is in the pudding, right? How well did it actually work? How did they test if these digital agents acted like the real bull?
Right, the benchmarking. This was crucial. They used 4 main components, all pretty standard, well-respected tools in social science. First, the General Social Survey, the GSS, specifically the core module.
Okay, the GSS, that covers a lot of ground, right? Social attitudes, beliefs?
Tons. 177 categorical questions, 6 numerical ones. Topics like government spending, race relations, personal beliefs, very comprehensive.
And what else?
Second, the Big 5 personality inventory, the BFI 44. That measures, openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, neuroticism, the standard personality dimensions.
Okay, personality traits. Makes sense. Third,
they had the agents play 5 well-known behavioral economic games. Things like the dictator game, public goods game, trust game, prisoner's dilemma.
Ah, the classic. Designed to reveal actual behavior, not just opinions, like altruism, trust, with simulated stakes, I assume.
Exactly. Assessing behavior like altruism and trust, often involving simulated financial incentives in the human versions.
Got it. And the fourth component.
Fourth was really interesting. 5 social science experiments, each with a control and a treatment condition.
Proper experiment.
Proper experiments. They picked ones from a big replication project, ones that worked well with about 1,000 people and could be run using text. They looked at things like perceived intent and blame, fairness and emotions, conflict intervention, dehumanization, power, and trust. Really fundamental social dynamics.
So they weren't just asking opinions, they were simulating how these digital people would behave in specific social situations. That's quite a test.
It is.
But wait, people aren't perfectly consistent themselves, right? How do they account for that?
That's a really important point. So the actual human participants did the surveys and experiments twice, 2 weeks apart.
Ah, to measure individual consistency.
Exactly. This let them calculate something called normalized accuracy. Basically, you take the agent's accuracy predicting someone's first response, and you divide it by how consistent that person was between their own 2 responses.
I see. So a score of 1.0 means the agent is basically as good at predicting the person as the person is at predicting themselves. A clever benchmark.
It is. It sets a realistic target.
So how did they do? How did the agents perform against this standard?
The results were pretty impressive, actually. For the General Social Survey, the interview-based agents hit an average normalized accuracy of 0.85.
0.85? That sounds really high.
It is. And importantly, they significantly outperformed agents that were built using just demographics or just generic personas. The interview data made a huge difference for capturing those social attitudes.
Wow. Okay. What about the Big 5 personality score?
Similar story. They found a normalized correlation there of 0.80. And again, the interview-based agents did much better than the other types. Suggests the deep conversations captured personality aspects that simple demographics don't reveal.
Okay, 0.80 correlation is strong too. And the experiments. Could the agents replicate actual experimental findings? That seems like the toughest test.
It does, yeah. And remarkably, yes. Both the humans and the interview-based agents successfully replicated the main findings for 4 out of the 5 experiments.
4 out of 5, that's significant.
Very. And what's more, the size of the effects they saw in the agents' responses closely matched the effect sizes seen in the humans.
So it's not just mimicking individual answers, but capturing broader patterns of how people react in those specific social situations.
Exactly. That's a really strong sign. They also did some extra checks, like comparing the full interviews to agents based only on survey experiment data or on summarized interviews. The full interviews definitely captured richer, more predictive information than just the survey experiment data alone. Summaries did okay, but it seems some of the, linguistic nuances, the specific details, and the full transcripts were valuable for getting top accuracy.
It really sounds like this opens up some new possibilities for studying. What's next? Are they making this agent bank available?
Yes, that's the plan. They want to provide controlled API access to the agent bank for the scientific community.
An API. So other researchers could query these agents for their own studies.
That's the idea. They see huge potential, both for social science developing simulations, testing theories, and for machine learning too, like benchmarking new AI models against these human-like responses.
What kind of access are we talking about? Can anyone just ask anything?
They're being careful. A two-tiered system. There'll be open access to aggregated responses on the fixed tasks like the surveys and experiments we discussed, so researchers can see group-level patterns.
Okay, useful for broad analysis. What about digging deeper?
Right. For asking custom questions to individual agents, that requires restricted access. Researchers will need to submit a proposal, outline their study, address privacy risks. It'll go through a review process.
That sounds sensible. Balancing open science with, the ethical need to protect the data derived from real people.
Exactly. They're committed to monitoring how the API is used and adapting things as needed. It's an ongoing process.
This has been, truly fascinating. We've seen how these agents built on rich interviews achieve pretty remarkable accuracy in predicting attitudes, behaviors across lots of different measures. It really underscores how moving beyond just demographics, tapping into those deep narratives, can give a much more nuanced simulation of our complex human world.
That's definitely a key takeaway, yeah. The reliance on that in-depth qualitative data is a big shift, and it seems to yield a much more faithful representation, both individually and collectively.
So wrapping this up, it really makes you think, doesn't it, about the possibilities of simulating human behavior at this. What new insights about ourselves, about society might we unlock these kinds of digital mirrors? It's definitely food for thought.
It certainly is.
And again, for those of you listening whose curiosity about the AI side has been sparked, don't forget the AI course at rajamankam.com and that discount code QPT. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.